New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello, my friends, and thank you for joining us for Spiritual Toolkit today. My name is Brock Ford, and I am your host. And joining me on the team is producer Peter Millar and our New Thought Media Network founder, Robert Brzezinski. The idea for this show came from my sincere desire to be of support and a voice for the disenfranchised, the struggling, and hurting people within my reach, to offer spiritual and ethical practices that help others transform their lives and relationships and careers. And my hope is that we can support others on their path to their passion, dreams, and best life, building a bridge of understanding, healing, and thriving for all. So we will have guests from all walks of life talking about real life and navigating its twists and turns triumphantly. So without further ado, I'm excited to have my good friends of many years here with us today. My guests are husbands Alan Klein and Dave Cooperberg of San Francisco. Dave is a licensed psychotherapist offering psychotherapy, personal growth work, and spiritual counseling through private practice in San Francisco since 1978. Eclectic, Dave's often in-depth work emphasizes being fully present. A mediator following Buddhist practices since the early 1970s, currently, Dave is the lead affirmative prayer chaplain and teaches classes at Unity of San Francisco as a licensed Unity teacher. Dave sees himself as a catalyst, assisting others to access and celebrate their own unique expressions of divine love. Thank you, Dave. And Alan Klein is a jollytologist, and he'll explain what that means in just a bit, I'm sure. And he is also an ambassador of light who shows audiences worldwide how to use humor and positivity to deal with life's not so funny stuff. He's a TEDx presenter on the power of intention and author of over 30 books, y'all, including the best-selling book, The Healing Power of Humor, as well as Embracing Life After Loss, and one of my favorites, The Awe Factor, which spiritualityandpractice.com called one of the best spiritual books of 2020, and I think they were right. So, and y'all, you can find that book and all of his other books on his website at alanklein.com/books. His website is alanklein.com. And then for the books, it's /books. And one last interesting note, comedian Jerry Lewis has said that Klein is a noble and vital force watching over the human condition. I think that's a wonderful thing, a noble and vital force watching over the human condition. What a wonderful quote that someone said about you, Alan. So for more information, check out alanklein.com. And with that said, y'all, let's welcome Alan and Dave to Spiritual Toolkit.
Hi, y'all.
Hi, y'all. How are you?
I'm from the South, actually, the South Bronx.
Well, and I'm from the south of the U.S. So, and it comes out, Alan, you already know that.
Yep.
It's good to see you both. Welcome, Dave. Welcome, Alan. Thank you both for being here and honoring us with your presence and the wonderful information that you're going to share with us today. So if you're ready, are y'all ready, Dave and Alan?
I'm all ready.
All right. Well, let's start off with, How did the two of y'all meet? And tell us a little bit about your life together.
Should I start, Dave, or you want to start?
However you want.
I'll start since I put the ad in the paper. Um, I was looking for a relationship, and it was the Advocate, the gay paper at the time. I put an ad in. There were a lot of sexual ads at the time, but mine was not sexual. Mine said something like, I have everything I want in my life or need in my life, but I would like somebody to share it with.
Hmm.
And, when I was talking to Dave about this question and our answer, I thought that is a very Unity. We belong to Unity Spiritual Center. It's a very kind of spiritual, affirming request. It's not like a needy, it's like I have everything, but I want to share it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a very, didn't realize it at the time, but it was a very positive kind of affirming, asking the universe for what I wanted.
Mm-hmm. Well, you put it out there, and look who showed up.
Well,
This wonderful person, yes.
I was going to joke that I answered the wrong ad, but that wasn't really what happened.
Well, he would have gotten that back then probably too. But at any rate, Dave, why don't you fill us in a little bit more about your perspective of it?
Well, I was at a time when I was looking for a relationship, and as a therapist, I felt like I shouldn't have to answer an ad. And then I realized, if you want something, you go for it, whatever it takes. And back in prehistory, we didn't have the internet. So if you were answering things, you were doing it by mail, postage mail. I mean, you could do by phones, but those were not set up for direct phone lines, which was for good reasons. And so I figured I was going to, and I said, I'm going to force myself to answer one ad out of this Advocate, because that was the only thing that had gay ads. And as Alan said, most of them were rather sexual. I mean, I always joke about the ad that says all these very explicit sexual desires and demands, and that adds a P.S. possible permanent relationship at the end. Obviously, the emphasis is different. So, but what he said was unlike others, he felt like he had what he wanted, and he wanted to share it. That it wasn't somebody to fix me, to change me, to do all that. I get paid for that stuff. And that's why I answered it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the funny thing is, Davis said, we've been together 43 years, Brock.
I did not know that. Wow.
And Davis tells other people, I wasn't his type.
Dave, what was not your type for him?
Well, I mean, it wasn't like there was. I had a specific type. I learned not to do that, because as soon as I thought what type A was I would be someone with B would be the one who I'd get involved with. That was getting kind of crazy making, but I didn't feel like there was it wasn't like stars going off and fireworks and all that, but it was really comfortable being with him. And I didn't decide I wanted to be with him. I decided I didn't need to decide. Just see where it goes. Mm-hmm. I could live to it. Mm-hmm. And I think what happened during that, part of what happened during that time was that I watched when I would go with him to meet people. He was working at Holistic Life University then. In particular, I remember coming in and watching people's face light up when they saw him. And that's not something you put in an ad, but that was really powerful. So it shows that he was obviously affecting people back then very strongly. In a positive way.
And for me, Brock, I had a young daughter. She was about 12 when you met her, Dave?
12 and a half, yeah.
And I noticed how they two related, how she really took to him, and how he took to her. And they were very playful together. And so that was a big plus. And I think the biggest plus, which still 43 years later, we laugh a lot together. We did then and we do now. And it's a really essential, I guess, thing in our relationship.
I can say that just from knowing you over the last 20 something years, however long it's been quite a while. I've always admired both of you for your relationship and the way you interact with each other. And I've been to your house lots of times too for dinner and meetings and things like that as well. And just the way that you're both so casual with each other and the love just shows, it just emanates from both of you. And I always have felt that you're a role model for people in the gay community of what a relationship can be. And so, at any rate, I've always enjoyed just watching both of you. So, thank you both very much. And Dave, I'm glad you answered that one ad and decided to meet this old man and and go forward.
Right.
So,
The other thing, Brock, it showed me is that, and that's actually my TED Talk is about the power of intention.
mhm,
Is by putting it in writing, I put out my intention in the world. And it's happened over and over and over with me, with my career, with my relationships, with my spiritual being, putting out what I visioned for myself in the world, and it happens. I manifest it.
mhm. Yep,
Um, yeah, so it's
and
so
that's the big
important.
power of visioning, already seeing it done, right? And seeing what and feeling that feeling that it's complete and done. And then it just manifests right into your life.
Right, right. And
What,
sometimes it doesn't. I wouldn't say 100%, but more than not, it does.
And
well,
for
it
me,
did with this one.
it was a little different take on that because it wasn't. I had written out what I wanted in a relationship and in a man, and I had like lists, and I worked on that. And then when I met Alan and I said, well, maybe we'll be just friends, I looked at my lists and I realized he met a lot of them. He gave me things to add to the list. and I said, I don't have to marry him right away, but either I have to change the list or I have to give this more time. So that was really coming from myself rather than somebody else telling me what you need in a relationship.
What, Dave, since you said that,
Yeah.
what is one thing that just really made you say, yeah, this is it. I'm going to go for it. We're going to do this.
Well, first of all, there was the playfulness. I was really feeling a need for more playfulness in my life at the time. And the way we laughed, and one of the things I didn't have on my list was around the laughter and all that. And it was very obvious that was part of what was going on. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think that he was, again, going back to the ad, that he was feeling like he had what he needed and he wanted someone to share it. That grasping neediness wasn't there.
And you can feel that when you're reading those ads. You can feel that it's palpable.
Yeah.
So that's a wonderful thing. And, God did it. The universe did it. Y'all put it out there. You set your intention, Alan and Dave, you wrote it down, and the two of you are together. And what a wonderful world it is because the two of you are together. So thank you. Dave mentioned, I'm going to skip just a little bit. Dave mentioned laughter and all of that. And that's one of the things that he admired about you, Alan. Can you tell our audience, I know what it is, but tell our audience a little bit about you being a jollytologist. Tell them what that is.
Okay. Well, for me, I made up the word, Brock.
I knew you did.
Yeah. Actually, there's a Greek word meaning gelos, Gelos, which means laughter. So gelotology means study of laughter. But when I call myself a gelotologist, people either didn't know what it was or they thought I made that wiggly dessert.
Well, that's what I thought of.
Yeah. So I changed it to jollytologist and people mostly get it. But basically it's I show people how to deal or use humor to deal with not so funny stuff. That's basically what I do, and I call that jollytologist.
What inside of you happened at some point in your life to take you on this path of humor and to write about it, to share it with the world?
Yeah, it started when my wife got a rare liver disease, primary biliary cirrhosis. And like with Dave, my wife and I laughed a lot together. That was something that bonded us a lot. And then she got this illness, and there was no cure, there was no liver transplant. And she had a great sense of humor. And so we would laugh a lot together in spite of all this. Now, there was a lot of tears, but there was also laughter. And she passed away after 3 years of knowing that she had this rare liver disease. And looking back, I realized it was the laughter, it was the humor that helped us rise above the situation. It wasn't all the time, but it was those moments when we were really down deep in the depths that something funny would happen and we would laugh about it.
Hmm.
One of the examples I always give is she had a copy of Playgirl magazine with the male nude centerfold, and she said, Alan, I really like this male nude man here. Can you put this picture on the wall by the bed over there? And I said, Ellen, this is a hospital. A little risque for that. And she said, okay, why don't you get a leaf from the plant over there and cover up that part? And I did that, and things are fine for the first day, fine for the second day. But by the third day, the leaf starts shriveling up. And we would look at that photo and we would start to laugh. And after she died, Brock, I realized that little bit of laughter, that 10, 20-second bit of laughter, helped us rise above the situation, gave us a reprieve, gave us the, relief that we needed. And so I had a business in San Francisco, and I gave it up. I sold it to my partner, went back to school to learn about death and dying, became a hospice volunteer. And I would notice that people who were dying, or their families or the caregivers, sometimes would use humor, and it would also always change the situation. And so I went back to school to learn about humor and therapeutic humor. And that's when I got a master's degree in human, HUMAN, development. And I wrote my first book, The Healing Power of Humor, which I just happen to have right here.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I knew a little bit about your wife just from conversations with you in the past. Do you want to also mention that big bright spot in your life, your daughter, and just what she does with her life?
My daughter's amazing. We laugh a lot together. In fact, since COVID, almost every day, so it's now almost 3 years, at 5 o'clock, she calls me and we just talk about the day. And some days I go, oh, Sarah's calling at 5. I have nothing to talk about. Well, 30, 40 minutes later, we're still on the phone chattering away. So it's a great relationship. She's an artist. I was an artist. I used to be a scenic designer at CBS television, designed such shows as Captain Kangaroo, Merv Griffin Show, Jackie Gleason Show. So I was an artist. Now she's an artist. In fact, she's currently, we're not going to talk today, she's in Los Angeles at a book fair showing her artwork. So yeah, we get along really well, and she really gets along well with David. And I'm always amazed, when she was growing up, she used to tell David her secrets and not me. And then sometimes, not all the time, but David would share some of them with me.
David. Well, she felt safe with David. She felt good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, didn't she used to live, I believe she lived out in the Sunset, very close to where I lived, where Peter and I lived. We lived at 30th and Moraga for, about 18, 19 years or something.
Yeah.
Didn't she live out in the Sunset also?
She does, right? Currently, her house is at Taraville, off of Taraville, and 36th Avenue.
36. I used to walk my dog on that little median strip there, and I remembered her living there.
Right across the street.
Very good. And I did not know. I think I had some thought way back when you said it, but I want to talk about Captain Kangaroo real quick. That used to be my favorite show, Alan. I would not miss that show. I loved watching Captain Kangaroo, that and Popeye. But at any rate, little did I know, all these years later, it was you, my friend, that was putting that together and doing the artwork for it.
Right. Well,
It's
you may
amazing.
remember his house. We're different ages, Brock, so I'm not sure. I did it for about 10, 11 years, late 60s to early 70s. But I call the house Tinker Toy Victorian because it had a lot of balls and spindles and
Mhm.
looked like you'd taken a Tinker Toy set and put it all together to make the captain's house.
Mm. Well, that was a big bright spot in my life. So thank you for being a part of that.
Yeah.
Talking about your wife sort of brought in the spiritual aspect for me, listening to you and how laughter is a spiritual thing as well. But share with us, both of you, actually, Dave and Alan, share with us a little bit about how your spiritual path began and what that looked like. And that brought you to Unity in San Francisco.
Yeah, well, I think we had started with different spiritual paths, and then we've come together. So we're both Jewish. We've gone to synagogues. It really wasn't our cup of tea. We were both bar mitzvahed. I don't remember a word from my bar mitzvah because it was all in Hebrew. I had no idea what it meant. So I was kind of looking for a spiritual path that kind of meant more to me. And I also didn't like many different religions have different ideas of what God is and what spirituality is. And I didn't quite like that. Even in the Jewish religion, there's Orthodox, there's conservative, there's Reform. And some may say they're better than others because they pray more. It if there's one, I always believed there was one God, and so that none of that worked for me. And then I found Unity. In fact, David and I went to a friend's wedding at Unity in Palo Alto, and I think we went there once again. And I love that the minister was talking about Moses, Buddha, Christ. He was bringing in all of these religions, and I love that. And so David and I explored Unity in San Francisco on Bush Street, and we didn't care for the Reverend at the time. And so I went and looked at the one in the avenues. They didn't have a minister, so I didn't go back there. So we still was searching. And then one day I got a email or phone call, I think at the time, from a friend saying, they don't have a minister on Bush Street and he's going to be a speaker there. Would I come and hear him? And so I was just becoming a speaker at that time. And so I wanted to kind of see what other speakers do and kind of hone my craft and learn how to be a better speaker. And so I'd go there every Sunday. And then we did get an interminister, Reverend Sonia Milton, who I loved and who actually was Jewish. So that she got a star just for that. But she was such a great person. And I just loved the lessons every Sunday. So I told Dave about it, but he had his own meditation group on Sunday. So he didn't come. And once in a while he came, and he can tell you about that. But I just stopped going. And then suddenly he started coming. And then two of my friends came. And it's so amazing to me because I became, as you know, Brock, president of the board after you. And then Dave became a prayer chaplain and now is a licensed Unity teacher, and now is the head prayer chaplain at Unity San Francisco. And then my other friend became a prayer chaplain. The other friend would still be here, but she moved to Carmel, or Monterey. So she's gone. But what amazed me, Brock, is how I didn't drag these people. I hardly said anything about Sunday service or what unity was, and yet here are two of the leaders followed me to unity.
Hmm.
So it has a very powerful message that I hardly talked about, but yet it rubbed off, I guess, on who I was and my being.
Mm-hmm. That minister that you referred to that was there when you first went, that you didn't care for that much, that's when I started I moved to San Francisco in 1996. It was December the 16th, actually, 1996. And that next Sunday, I started going, I wanted to find a Unity because I had been going to Unity in Dallas. And then my mom took us to Unity as well. So at any rate, but I went to Unity and it was okay. I liked it. But one of the things that I heard back in Dallas at Unity, and then I heard it again in San Francisco, and it was Reverend Maureen Bass that said it, and it was that God loves everyone. There is no exceptions. And then she brought up the gay word. And when she said that, I had just been through a lot and some shame and things of that nature and didn't want everybody to know I was gay or whatever. But that was the first time I ever heard someone in a church say that God loved me. And so when Reverend Sonia showed up, it just solidified me being at that Unity San Francisco church because I just adored Reverend Sonia. And like you said, her talks were just amazing and in depth and really taught us a lot. But at any rate, so I'm glad we were all there together and that we all got to meet so that we're here today, Alan and Dave. Thank you.
By the way, Brock, you just said God loves me is one of the big messages. And we saw there is a film on YouTube, if you haven't seen it, of Maya Angelou saying how she found Unity, and it was Unity San Francisco. And she said, because what she heard was just what you heard, that God loves me. And when she heard that, this is an interview with Oprah. And when she heard that, it like turned her spirituality around and she started to follow Unity. That one same message that you heard.
Mm-hmm. Unity has been a huge help in my life. I love being a part of Unity. Dave, will you tell us a little bit about being a prayer chaplain at Unity and what that entails and how you feel about it? And what did that take to become that?
Oh, I'm trying to make up some story now. Well, you know, when I started attending Unity, leave it at that. There was a number of interesting steps before that. But when I got into Unity, I realized I was attending on Sundays, but it just wasn't enough for me. And there were classes during the week, but I often had clients in the evening, being in private practice as a therapist. And then I heard about becoming a prayer chaplain, and I realized I don't really know what they even mean by prayer. And so Errol Roloff, who was running it, you remember Errol, had this, a couple of times a year, he would have this thing where he could come to and ask questions and all this. And that's where I asked him about prayer, and he said, he started talking about it. And when he talked about it, it was really about getting quiet and affirming what's good in life. And I was thinking, in many ways, this is stuff I've already done in different contexts. Now, the funny thing at the time, which I'll never forget because of the look on Errol's face, they were always talking about how positive this and positive that. And I said, what if somebody wants to pray for something negative, like she should drop dead or something like that? The look on Errol's face. Yeah. I wish I had a camera. It was so funny. Nobody ever does that now. But then I got into the prayer chaplaincy, and it was a subgroup within Unity where I could get more into depth with people, and the trainings were very interesting because even when we were practicing prayers that nobody had asked for, we would really, because people were into it, we'd really get emotional and really feel the power of prayer, even in that sort of made-up scenario, because the context, the text, if you will, the story itself was less important than the learning behind the story. but the growth behind the story.
I like the fact that you brought up Errol, because he was quite an icon as a chaplain. And I always loved his prayers. He had the deepest, most radio type voice. And it was just, you wanted to listen to him talk. But when he said his prayers, it was like listening to Moses or something. He really said those prayers. But I miss Errol. He was a good friend. And thank you for bringing his name up, Dave. I hadn't thought about him in a while. Thank you.
Brock, for your listeners that may not know about Unity, I think we should say that, it is a New Thought church and it uses New Thought thinking. I don't know if Dave wants to elaborate on that couple of sentences, what New Thought is.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
It's been a while since I took my classes and all that, but New Thought came out of I sort of think of them as refugees from more fundamentalist religions in the second half of the 1800s. And Unity was by Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, were a couple of people. There were several of them. And I'm losing my focus here. Unity didn't start as a church. It started as a healing practice. Myrtle and Charles, in a different way, basically healed themselves with affirmative prayer, affirming the wholeness that they are, not focusing on the disease, but on the wholeness that's behind it. And by doing so, Myrtle healed herself. I don't know if they had a name for it at the time. People believe it was, was it tuberculosis? I think they thought it was.
It was TB.
We don't know for sure, but it was uncurable at that point. So she was not expected to live very long. She'd had it most of her life. And after a year or two of that, she was fully over it. And so, and it became a church because people wanted more instruction, more how to live that life more. It's very powerful writings.
One of the, sometimes I'll speak about Myrtle because I think it's phenomenal what she and Charles both did to bring this movement to us. But Myrtle, when I talk about her, she sat in front of her mirror in her bedroom for 2 years. I think it was 2 years. And she would do it for 4 hours a day. Now, I don't know if she took breaks or what, but she sat there and she saw herself healed in that mirror. And she would speak to her body affirmative things, words. And then she also said, I'm a child of God. There's no way I can have disease. And so she did that and she was healed and she lived a long life. And Charles, the father of Unity, one leg was shorter than the other. And his leg grew a couple of inches. So at any rate, but it's the power of what you said earlier, Alan, the power of intention, the power of our thoughts, the power of our heart and our feeling nature to bring things into our life or to live and be a certain way.
So part of that healing process, people talk about healing, and if you're going to do an affirmation and it could happen instantly. Well, it could happen instantly, but frankly, I don't believe that's really how it happens. It may be manifested, come to completion in a moment, but it's more like Myrtle's thing, where that becomes part of your life. You start revisioning and seeing yourself as whole. And the more that becomes real to you, in a sense, the body catches up to it.
Exactly
So,
true.
But people want an instant healing, which is like TV dinners. And I think what happens, particularly with physical healing, when we have that more positive image and we start working with that, it doesn't just work on a physical level. Our whole attitude towards life becomes more positive. I think whether we're talking about healing or prosperity or other things like that, they're really all talking about the same thing, the same process of seeing the wholeness and the love and the oneness, which is another aspect of it.
Thank you, Dave. Those are beautiful words and so true. And thank you for sharing that. Y'all, what we need to do real quick is take a little bit of a break. So, Peter, if you'll take us out to break, we'll be back on New Thought Media Network, the Spiritual Toolkit, and Dave and Alan in just about 3 minutes. All right? And welcome back to Spiritual Toolkit. I'm Brock Ford and my guest, Alan Klein and Dave Cooperberg. Welcome back. Thank you, guys. I wanted to switch just a little bit. We've got about 20 minutes left on the show. And I've probably got about a million questions in my head I wanted to ask. But at any rate, I wanted to ask both of you, actually, to answer this question for the audience. So just like this show is called Spiritual Toolkit, and I talk about what are the tools, I give a talk sometimes about Spiritual Toolkit and name the talk that. But when I do that, I talk about what are the tools that are in your box that when you're having a crisis or depression or grief or upsetness or someone swerved and almost hit you on the road, what can you reach into that toolbox and get to help align yourself back? So I know what my tools are. And Alan, what are some of the tools that you use, spiritual tools, new thought tools, that help you with your life, with your jollytology work, your writing? And then Dave, the same thing with you, with your psychotherapy. Do you utilize spiritual principles and tools and practices in your dealings with your clients? And now I'll shut up and let y'all answer.
Well, a couple that I use, Brock, is, first of all, I go inward and I sit quietly. You know, even if I'm about town, I can just stop, close my eyes, or even keep my eyes open, take a few breaths and go inward. Because I know that the answers are inside of me. You know, I know that from unity that God is out there, but it's also within me. And so I go in and ask whatever question I want. I always get the right answer for me. So that's one of them I use. The other is I've learned, you know, I just turned 85, and I learned over all those years that it may whatever's happening at the moment may not be something I like or may seem terrible, but I don't know why that's happening to me. But what I do know is that down the road there will be some meaning for what just happened, and often that meaning shows me why that happened to me and why that was important for my life and for my growth. So those are the two that come. I have a lot of others, but those two that come to my mind immediately.
Thank you for sharing that. Dave, what about you? Do you utilize your prayer chaplain work and things of that nature and knowledge that you know with your psychotherapy?
Never.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell me more.
Well, first I want to say, by the way, that I've been a therapist for many years, and I was involved with Buddhist communities, Zen Buddhism, for many years. And I'm now involved with Unity for, I don't know, over 10 years, leave it at that. I don't know quite when that started. But, and I realized all my life, I've used everything I have. And the boundaries between what's psychotherapy, what's spiritual growth, what's human growth, they're loose, very loose boundaries in that, for me, in that. And I will draw what seems to be useful from whatever area, whether I'm talking about myself or for working with people. And so, you know, I think you used the word catalyst earlier in describing yourself. And for many years, that was the word I would use, because I really felt that a lot of my work was about helping people find their own strengths. You know, yeah, I can give them advice somewhat, but at best, that's of limited use. What really changes for people is when they learn how to learn better themselves from their own experience. I'll try not to go off on another tangent with that. The meditation, very simple, silent meditation, very simple and very difficult. A lot of people cannot tolerate it for more than a few minutes or even that much. That's been the bedrock for me as an adult in terms of things. That and prayer, I think what unity brought with prayer is something more active for me. I think the meditation was much more of a passive thing because the affirmations, you get the intention and you're affirming it. That was something that had been missing. And I knew there was something missing in my practice. And that's what I got out of unity. So for me, those are, I mean, there's lots of different things I could go into. You talk about being present, of course, is another thing. And the body, I realized I've been doing some healing workshops at Unity and what I call now calling spiritual healing workshop. But a lot of it is paying attention to the body, and that the pain, the suffering, whatever goes on, it's telling me something. Whatever else it's telling me, it's reminding me to be present.
Mm-hmm. You know, my guests last week were saying very similar to what you just said, talking about being present with the body and knowing what the body is saying to you. I think that's very important. Thank you for sharing that. And I have a question that just popped up in my head when Alan was talking a few minutes ago. And Alan, forgive me, but when you said you were 85, I didn't know you were 85. I knew you were older than me. But 85 is, wow, what a wonderful mile mark. And I hope that you get to 100,005 as well, and that you get to stay around. But,
Thank you.
But here's what it brought up for me. And forgive me if it's a weird question. When I came out, I was 22 and I'm 61 now. So it was not a good experience. And I think you already all know about that. So we won't go into that. But what I wanted to ask you is, when you came out, it was after you were already married. But what was your experience and coming out? And was it difficult in that day and time? I know that was like 50 years ago or something. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so what was it like for you?
Well, you know, I had been carrying that around, being gay, since I was 7 years old. You know, I knew it somehow. So when I finally came out, and it was with the help of my wife, so that was good. It's, you know, this saying, and it's kind of cliche-ish, but the truth will set you free. I felt it was like this burden taken off my shoulders, because, and you know this, Brock, it's like you're hiding who you are. Mm-hmm. And that's and I, you know, looking back, I used to get like a headache, a severe sinus headache or sore throat once a month. And I think looking back, I think some of it was due to the stress of hiding who I was. Mm-hmm. And so it was very freeing, and most people were very loving and still love me. That didn't change. Mm-hmm. What was frightening for me, and I guess I could have come out too, is I was traveling all over the country speaking, and particularly in places I didn't know, or in the South, say way in the country somewhere. I would again go back in my shell and afraid to come out. And you know, I talk about my wife dying and stories around that, and the humor around that, and the sadness around that. And then after the program, people would come up to me and wanting to know if I remarried. And here I was with David, but I was afraid to tell them that. So I kind of went back into my shell again until I felt the right time, or the right, you know, it depends where I was. Because, you know, then there were, you know, you hear in the news the Matthew Shepard incidences. So again, I'd be frightened again, you know, to tell people in places I didn't know who these people were, how they'd react to me.
Exactly.
So it was an in and out of the closet at times.
And look at you now. Thank you for sharing that, Alan. I just wondered what the different perspectives was from like my growing up, my coming out. You know, I had to leave town under the threat of death. So I left and started a new life in Dallas. And life just happened, and it's been wonderful ever since. I'm very thankful for it. And it took me a long time to forgive my family, but it finally did happen, and it happened while I was in seminary because they said I had to forgive everyone. And I'm like, even those people, and I did. And my life became better because I was able to forgive that. Even though some of those people are dead and gone, I was able to forgive. But Dave, what was your situation when you came out? How did your family react and your friends?
Well, coming out to whom, as I say.
Well, when you decided to be gay and let everybody know it.
Well, I felt like gay decided me. I think it was
Okay.
doing acid in New York City when I was in college. I had to come out. That's part of what came. I started having basically. I had an anxiety attack on acid. It was quite intense, and afterwards, and I came out first to a teacher of a psych class, and that was a powerful experience for a number of ways. But with my family, I came out to my family when I was living out in San Francisco. My family was in New York at the time, and I basically was politically involved, and I realized some of this stuff was going on in the news, and I didn't want particularly my mother to find out indirectly about it. I remember thinking of a friend of my mother's who was a real bitch. She did some nasty stuff later, but I could see her telling my mother in the most painful way. And so I wrote a long letter, way too long letter, 5 pages before coming out to my parents. I'd already come out to my older brother and a cousin. And we talked about it. And my older brother said, you should not come out. Your father believes in the Bible. This is not going to go. That wasn't my father, and it wasn't how he reacted. My mother lost her voice. But that was true about anything related to sex with my mother. So basically, I came out because I realized I wanted it to come from me, not from someplace else. And that's how I came out to my family in the end.
Thank you for sharing that. Sometimes that's hard, just thinking back about all of that and taking me back to 39, 40 years ago, whatever it was. So at any rate, and some people have wonderful experiences coming out. Their families just embrace them. And these young kids these days, I'm doing a workshop, 2 workshops on diversity. And this last one is navigating the path of diversity in religion. I just did that at the Unity of Vacaville. And these young kids just amaze me at the knowledge they have, at the intention that they have, and that they are not afraid to be who they are. It wasn't like us being in the closet and being scared to tell anybody. And I'm learning so much from these young kids today. And I even consulted 2 young kids to help me understand more about the terminology and trans and the feeling nature of it all. And then I wrote a workshop about it. So we all have our own path and our ways that we came out and the support that we had and the support that we didn't have. But what I would like, we've got like 7, Peter, I think we have like 8 minutes left. Is that right? Something like that. Alan, would you be willing to, well, first I want to last thoughts from both of you, but also Alan, before we do that, would you be willing to read a portion of your writing?
I would.
Oh, good.
We mentioned that I might read 2 from both books, Healing Power of Humor and The Awe Factor. But I think that's the time, and this is about a page. I only read from the Healing Power of Humor.
All right. Well, then you'll just have to come back another day, another month, and do the rest. Okay.
And the little jingle that was on when we had the intermission or the break, kind of this is perfect for that, this reading. And this is from one of the sections in the book called Attitude, Whistle a Happy Tune. Back in the Middle Ages, according to a story told by educator Edward Pulling, a dispatcher went out to determine how laborers felt about their work. He went to a building site in France. He approached the first worker and asked, "What are you doing?" "What, are you blind?" the worker snapped back. "I'm cutting these impossible boulders with primitive tools and putting them together the way the boss tells me. I'm sweating under the blazing sun. It's backbreaking work, and it's boring me to death." The dispatcher quickly backed off and retreated to a second worker. He asked the same question. "What are you doing?" The worker replied, "I'm shaping these boulders into usable forms, which are then assembled according to the architect plans. It's hard work, and sometimes it gets repetitive, but I earn 5 francs a week, and that supports my wife and the kids. It's a job. It could be worse." Somewhat encouraged, the dispatcher went on to a third worker. "And what are you doing?" he asked. "Why, can't you see?" said the worker as he lifted his arms to the sky. "I'm building a cathedral."
Mhm.
It's such a wonderful story because, what do we do all day long? Whatever it is, whatever we do, are we just chopping up rocks? Or are we building a cathedral? Or even our interactions with people.
Mhm.
Um, I remember when I first moved here, there was a carrier that would distribute the newspaper, a black man, and he was the most interesting, fun. He would often give me free newspapers, but he just loved his job and interacting with everyone he gave a newspaper to. And I thought that was such a menial job, but look, the job didn't matter. It was how he did his job. And it's a real lesson. This story is a real lesson for me. And like, how do I live my life? And so that's why I wanted to read it.
Well, I'm glad you did. And those are wonderful last thoughts. Thank you very much, Alan. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dave, would you be willing to do one of your prayer chaplain duties and to pray us out today in closing the show? And before you do, well, first, yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, and then I want you to pray us out, and then Peter can just take us out once you're finished with the prayer. So we come to the end of our show. Alan and David, thank you. I could almost cry. I love you both so much. I'm grateful for your participation and sharing such interesting, thoughtful, and helpful information with us. And thank you to all of our viewers and subscribers, and to Peter Millard doing our producing, and a shout out to Robert Brzezinski, the founder of New Thought Media Network. Thank God he decided to make this thing. And join us next week when we meet with minister and spiritual teacher Karsten Spencer. We work together at the Unity of Richmond Church. He's the senior minister. I'm the associate minister. And to make sure to check out all the other great shows. And y'all, there's a lot of great shows on New Thought Media Network at ntmedia.org. So I wish everyone wonderful blessings. Good night. Have a wonderful week. And Dave, if you would, pray us out.
Okay. And taking a few moments apart, you can close your eyes or not. Take a few slow, deep breaths, breathing in relaxation, and with the exhale, releasing all unnecessary tensions. We have just spent some time together, sharing ideas, thoughts, experiences, understanding of the divine, understanding what a spiritual path is from different perspectives, looking at diversity and how different people take the challenges in life, and rather than build resentment, open up, using them as opening up to allow the light to shine that is within each of us. So we give thanks for taking this time apart to share with one another, to share the love and the light and the knowledge that we are each growing in as long as we are alive, with our eyes open, loving, and present. And in thanks for this, we say, and so it is. Amen.